My name is Ifeoma Willis, and my topic for oral presentation for my political science class is it says, should the government take lead in addressing climate change? I'll start by saying I agree that climate change isn't all individuals' fault, but there is a lot an individual can do to avert climate change. The United Nations released a report in 2018 that contains some dire news for humanity. It says we have less than 2 decades and plenty of hard work ahead to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius and avoid catastrophic consequences to the planet. Well, I'm of the opinion that government should not take the lead in addressing climate change. Individuals can take actions that impact climate change. The IPCC, an intergovernmental panel on climate change of the United Nations, emphasizes that behavior or lifestyle and cultural change have a high mitigation on climate change, especially when these changes are accompanied by complementary technological changes. Well, others have argued that individual actions do mitigate climate change are insignificant, whereas others view human actions as a leading way to collective action to mitigate climate change. Examples of these actions by individual include some things like changing your diet. Well, if you consume less meat, that is much better than, it's not good. It's better to consume less meat, I say, sorry. Then transportation. You can help out by limiting the climate change crisis. Instead of driving alone to San Francisco, you carpool with your friends to work and save the planet. You can engage in a local or political advocacy to promote the issues about climate change. Then in the house, you could use less energy. Instead of using a machine to process your food, you could as well do it, the local way, do it with your hand to save energy. And then you limit the amount of goods you consume, because the more goods you consume, the more trash you bring out. That is not good for the environment. Well, individuals alone will not be able to take the lead in addressing climate change. The government at any level, the local, state, federal, and even global governance need to step up and take the lead to address climate crisis. Andreas Leverman, in an opinion he had in Guardian on July 10, 2019, posited that global challenges in our climate should be handled by governmental institutions. He's of the view that it is the responsibility of the individual to stay informed and demand that politicians make issue of climate change their top priority. He further reasoned that individual personal sacrifice alone will not be enough to make the level of change we desire if we want to solve the climate change crisis. Solving the climate change requires fundamental changes which cannot only be achieved by the individual sacrifices alone. Excuse me. If we don't expect individuals to take lead on social, we don't expect individuals to take lead on social and economic issues, then they shouldn't take a lead on climate change. It should be the government to do that. Unless that individual is maybe a CEO of a big company like Shell, Chevron, Mobil, or a mayor of a city, then they can have an impact. an individual have no significant impact on climate change issue unless they are like a big CEO of a company. What individuals should do is to demand that the politicians and the governmental institutions take an urgent action towards addressing climate change. The government should take the lead in addressing climate change because according to the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions on Congress and climate change, federal efforts to address the climate change are undertaken under laws and with funding approved by Congress. This site pointed out that climate change touches a wide range of interests and any effective climate change solution should carefully balance these interests. The balancing of interests achieved through legislative process. Most of the federal climate efforts have been under the 1970 Clean Air Act, which was not originally made to address climate change crisis. Notably, the most effective way to reduce greenhouse emission and avoid the worst consequences of climate change is a comprehensive market-based approach that puts a price on carbon. For example, incentivizing carbon capture and use and storage. Things like advancing nuclear energy, improving energy efficiency, modernizing infrastructure, etc. Rosna Hillary, in an article titled How State and Local Governments Are Leading the Way on Climate Policy, pointed out how 15 states in the United States, have binding plans that are geared towards reducing greenhouse emissions. These actions by the states become increasingly important since the Trump administration decided and pulled the United States out of the Paris Accord 2 years ago. The state and the local governments are able to act and cut down emissions with the support they get from businesses, community groups, conservation organizations like Audubon. To achieve this, for the state and local government to achieve this, they have to look beyond cutting down emissions to making efforts to create innovative programs to help human and wildlife adapt to changes from the climate crisis. The climate change challenges involves every nation, and if not addressed, the outcome will take longer to revise. Yes, individuals, local government, and state and federal government can only do so much to help combat climate change. It is the United Nations through framework like the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, that assists in the development and creation of new carbon markets. An example would be the Kyoto Protocol Clean Development Mechanism, CDM, which allowed developed countries to offset some of their emissions through clean and renewable energy projects and certain forestry schemes in developing countries. Thank you, Professor Dewey, for giving me an opportunity to be in your political science classes. I have learned so much from you, and I hope you enjoy my little presentation on whether government or individuals should take a lead in a climate change crisis. And I have my reference on the reference page. And thank you so much for having me in your class. You're welcome. Click.